I can confidently tell you that crazy cat lady status has been unlocked, because between my earrings and this t-shirt, I mean, let's be honest, crazy cat lady. Hi, hello, and welcome to today's pet pairing video, which is also going to be a bit of a like my commentary on the Pat McGrath x Louis Vuitton release. I'm going to start doing my makeup and we're just going to casually start chatting. I'm going to take the Inglot eyeshadow primer to apply on my eyelids. So before I say another word, let us just all put our critical thinking hats on and then move into discussing this whole release, because I feel like a lot of people forgot to put their critical hat thinking on and are talking smack out of their bums. And I really don't want to do that. I really want us to remain critical and objective in this video so that we can discuss this makeup release without the emotional response that a lot of people seem to have associated with it. I'm quickly going to throw on the Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation in the shade 3 and 1 while we're doing that. So quite some months ago, I think towards the end of the year or something in those lines, it was announced that Pat McGrath has been appointed Pat McGrath is the creative director for the upcoming Louis Vuitton makeup line. And this has probably been in the works for quite a few years, because you don't just put up a whole beauty release within a couple of months. They announced it at the point at which the release was probably almost ready to go. So Pat has been the creative director for Louis Vuitton for the past couple of years, which to me might somewhat explain the fact that her brand seems to have suffered a little bit from her divided attention, let's put it that way. I don't think her brand is doing poorly by any means. I don't think her brand is putting out low quality products. It's just that her attention has been a bit shifted, and that might have been the reason why we did not get a mothership in 2024. We did get one this year though. Anyway, so this has probably been in the works for a couple of years. And no, Pat McGrath being the creative director for Louis Vuitton does not in any way preclude her from remaining in charge of her own brand, and she's still in charge of it. She has not left Pat McGrath Labs. I think there are some like false rumors circulating around that to my knowledge, Pat McGrath is still heavily involved with her own brand as well. So this whole thing has been happening for, you know, quite a while. I heard about it and then I got excited. And I did not get excited because I care one bit about Louis Vuitton. I was excited because I'm a huge fan of Pat McGrath, our Dame Mother, Lord and Savior. Love her creative vision, love what she does. Her makeup line is definitely probably my favorite makeup line to have been released in the past decade. I'm going to take the Bendy Avocado Concealer from First Aid Beauty in the shade Fair. I was excited about this brand, like I said, because of Dame Mother, because the matter of fact is, I'm your average Joe. I have average means and an average income. I am an academic researcher. I'm clearly not a wealthy person. So luxury, like fashion houses, have never been, like I've never been the target audience of luxury fashion houses. I like to admire them from afar. I like to fantasize about what clothes or what bags I would purchase from luxury fashion houses, but I would probably not go out and buy one even if I could afford it, because I'm just too pragmatic for that. So as far as I'm concerned, I have no loyalties, no feelings regarding any fashion house. So to me, Louis Vuitton is just one of the many brands out there that I do not give a tiny rat's ass about. And if I were to base my opinions on luxury makeup bags that have struck me as really beautiful, Louis Vuitton would not make the cut. I do not like their canvas bags, like the branded, like the logo, the monogram logo canvas bags. Not my preference. There's nothing about those bags that speaks to me. Other luxury bags speak a lot more to me, and that's just a matter of personal preference. I think that everyone is allowed to have their preferences, their reasoning for why they participate into luxury, because obviously to participate into luxury, you're not just buying the quality of the product. Obviously you're buying high quality product. That's of course one of the reasons these brands are priced so highly. But the other reason is of course for the status that wearing a product from one of those luxury fashion houses can give you. And again, I don't really care about status. It's just not something that I've ever been interested in. I think if that's something that interests you, if you want people to know that you're wearing a Louis Vuitton bag and you're wearing the newest Chanel, you know, couture collection, that's totally fine. If you can afford it, if it makes you happy, the world is your oyster. Please go ahead, you do you, and I'll do me. There's really no judging here. But again, because of that, I just simply don't care about the luxury fashion houses. So I do not come into this with any sort of feelings for the Louis Vuitton brand itself. Like I said, if anything, I couldn't care less about Louis Vuitton themselves. But I do love Pat, and I do love her creative vision, and I was quite excited to see what she has created with Louis Vuitton. I'm going to take the Prada Reset Rebalancing Setting Powder to set the foundation. And my expectation price for the price of these products was, I was fully convinced that these are going to be somewhere around the €100 mark. The lipsticks were probably going to be placed at around 80 to 90 euros, and the eyeshadow palettes would probably range between 100, tops 120 euros. So yes, just like all of you, I also gasped when I realized that I had somewhat underestimated where Louis Vuitton wants to place themselves in terms of their pricing. They went a little bit higher than my expectations. Not so much higher that I would be utterly shocked, but enough for me to be disappointed. And I think people are really confusing being disappointed that they can't participate in this brand with other reasonings. Again, I will reiterate from my previous video, because I wasn't going to say it again, but I've just seen so many people and so many reactions in these lines. I really please put your critical thinking hat on and stop using language like, how dare they in this economy, how dare they in the state of the world, how tone deaf, are they mocking us? No, they're a luxury brand. Luxury brands do what luxury brands do. They charge insane prices for their products. They've been doing that for the past 100 years. Nothing's changed. And I'm sorry, but nothing about the state of the world has changed in terms of dips in the economy and conflicts around the world. And if anything, our society has evolved, so comparatively we have it better than any other generation prior to us. These luxury fashion houses have survived world wars. Not all of them, some of them have been established after the Second World War. Like, I had to look it up yesterday just to make sure I'm not talking shit out of my bum. I looked it up, and a lot of these brands have been started before the two world wars, Louis Vuitton included. Louis Vuitton started in 1856, I want to say, or 65, one of the two. I'm not entirely sure. So yes, Louis Vuitton has been around for world wars, conflicts, financial crises, and they've survived. And let me tell you, they're going to be just fine. And their makeup line is going to be gobbled down by their, fan base, like every other product that they put out. So yes, we here are allowed to be disappointed, because we here got used to being able to afford, or at least those of us who have enough income to be able to afford these kind of products, because not everyone does, but those of us who can afford it got used to being able to afford luxury beauty, because we can buy a Chanel quad, we can buy a Dior lipstick, we can even buy an Hermes lipstick. We can even buy an Hermes highlighter, which I want to say cost more than 100 euros. Let's all not forget that not that long ago, Hermes charged over 100 euros for a highlighter. And while I love their packaging, because it's pretty to look at, their packaging is not exactly the most high quality, hefty packaging I've seen out there. Their lipsticks are incredible. I think Hermes kills the game with their lipsticks. In terms of the components, so far, in my opinion, Hermes makes the best outer components for the lipsticks. They're the most luxurious ones out there. Let me quickly do my brows. I'm going to use the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax for that. So yes, I was disappointed, because I was expecting the prices of the Louis Vuitton makeup brand to be priced around 100 euros, and in that case I had allowed myself the possibility, if I like what I see, to purchase one lipstick and one eyeshadow palette. Let me pull out my Hourglass Evil Eye palette to do my face makeup. So my bronzer, my blush and highlighter are all going to come from this palette. So that's a little bit on where I stand in terms of the pricing of the Louis Vuitton makeup brand. Now, because of that, I've become far more reluctant to try it. Because in the end of the day, if buying a lipstick and an eyeshadow palette from Louis Vuitton equates buying a pretty decent dishwasher, I think my pragmatic self, my Eastern European pragmatic self, might just find this a little too outrageous. I think for blush I'm going to take this one here, the rosier one. I think it's going to fit the look I'm going on a bit better. But anyway, let's now talk about the actual products that will be featured in this release. So the release comes with 55 lip products, and I wasn't aware of that, but I watched Amelia's video on the release and she had an absolutely hysterical, you know, you can always count on Amelia to give you a good chuckle when she talks about new makeup releases. So if you want to have a good chuckle and some really good insights into the Louis Vuitton brand, I highly recommend watching Amelia's video. But apparently there is a specific reason why they're releasing 55 lip products. It struck me as an oddly specific number, but I never really gave it much thought. I thought, well, if 55 is what floats their boat, fine by me. But apparently there is a reason for it, because in Roman letters LV stands for 55. There you go. A little tidbit that I learned from Amelia. So the 55 lipsticks are going to be spread across several different formulations. There are going to be lip balms. The lip balms come in the white packaging, very eerily similar to Pat McGrath's own brand, where the lip balm formula comes in white packaging, and the matte and satin lipsticks are going to come in black packaging, and they are all going to be refillable. Taking the highlight shade to quickly highlight my cheekbones. And besides that, there are going to be 8 eyeshadow quads. So the palettes are going to just be quads, featuring a variety of different color stories, from really colorful ones to really neutral ones, ranging from warm to neutral to cool. I'm going to quickly set all the powdered products on my face with a little bit of the Charlotte Tilbury fixing spray. Alright, I've zoomed you in, let's get started on the eye look. For this first eyeshadow, I'm going to dip into the Beloved Decadence palette, and I'm going to use this really beautiful deeper navy blue shade, which I'm going to utilize to sort of carve out here the lash line, sort of as like a smoky liner. So the overall feel that I get from the packaging, and obviously it is extremely difficult to judge based on photos, because photos can be very much deceiving, but at least based on the photos that I've seen, the packaging strikes me as rather luxurious and hefty looking. I think it's very well thought out. I think it's very much within the branding of Louis Vuitton. There are little details there that are really going to appeal to the fan base of Louis Vuitton. And I do think that it looks very cute and very well thought out and very luxurious. Now, whether that's going to actually translate to it feeling like this in the hands, I'm not sure. Because we all remember the Valentino makeup release, where the products looked, to me, they looked very over the top and kitschy, but that's just my personal preference. However, unfortunately, from what I understand, they felt extremely cheap and plastic in the hands. So how something comes across in a picture doesn't always translate in how it will feel in real life. I assume, based on what I've seen and based on the fact that Pat McGrath is also behind it, that this is going to be very luxurious, and considering the price, I would assume that a lot of focus has been put into the packaging. And that's where I want to say something very important. Please don't assume that because they're charging these prices for their lip products and their eyeshadows, you're going to get formulas that are groundbreaking, never seen before, that you're going to get colors and finishes that you've never seen before. That is not going to be the case. By now, we've mostly seen it all. There will be probably slight alterations to makeup formulations, there will be innovations. I'm sure that, you know, exciting new things are to come. But with that said, you shouldn't assume automatically that just because the price is so high, these are going to be different. I just don't think that you're going to be able to feel the difference between these and other luxury formulas when it comes to the actual makeup products. So the actual makeup products will probably be a very high quality, but they will not be anything groundbreaking. That's my prediction. Where I think a lot of attention to detail has gone to, because they're trying to cater to their fan base, is the freaking packaging. Because a matter of fact is that you and I, the people who can't really afford to buy a Louis Vuitton bag because it costs several thousand euros, we're going to look at this lipstick, or the little like pouch that comes with the lipstick. Oh yeah, they're releasing a bunch of accessories to go with the makeup line, which are also a bit more palatable in terms of their price. So that's the other thing, that this makeup release feels like not your standard makeup release, but as a fashion house releasing additional accessories to appeal to the fan base out there who can't afford their bags. because the people who can't afford their bags, because they're several thousand euros, might look at this release and think, well, finally something I can swallow price-wise from Louis Vuitton. If you really wanted to own an item from Louis Vuitton because it's your favorite brand, you like their aesthetic, and you've always dreamt of having something, but the price range was always very much outside of your comfort zone, you're going to look at this release and think, well, it's expensive, but it's much more palatable compared to the several thousand you're going to have to pay for any of their other products. Gosh, I'm talking too much, I'm not even able to progress with my makeup all that fast. I'm going to now go into my beloved Subversive palette, and I'm going to use this eyeshadow here, the Blue Purple Duochrome, because I haven't used this in a really long time. It's in Pat's, what I would assume is VR formula, and it's such a beautiful and gorgeous eyeshadow, and I actually look forward to using it since it's been a while. I'm going to use it all over my lids and blend it through the crease a little bit. It's sort of like a one and done shade for the lids. I might apply a little bit of glitter glue later on, so don't be too bothered. There's like a little line that formed here because there was, I think, gathering of eyeshadow primer over there. So before I went on several different tangents, I just wanted to say that I like the packaging. I think the packaging is quite adorable, it's quite classy, and I personally think it's fine. I do think that it's a little bit boring that we're getting black and white cases for the lipsticks. I feel like they could have played a bit more onto the monogram canvas of the Louis Vuitton bags, and for example, instead of black they could have had some dark brown chrome type packaging for the outer component, something that reflects their brand a bit more, because I think black and white is just so tired, but at the same time it's classy, everyone likes black and white. So I'm assuming that there's a reason they went with black and white. Gosh, that eyeshadow is pretty, I forgot how pretty that eyeshadow is. And then let's talk a little bit about the lip products. So the lip products are, like I said, balms, satins and mattes. If I were to try a lipstick, I would probably go for a red lipstick in the matte finish. I've thought about this. So if I could choose to put a refill from the matte and the satin into the balm packaging, I would, because I like white packaging a lot more than I like black packaging. Black is just really boring to me. When it comes to shoes, when it comes to bags, when it comes to anything, I think black is super boring. I have black things because I think sometimes they're classy and necessary, but I am a sucker for white, especially when it comes to white packaging in makeup. So if I were to choose a lip product, it would definitely come in the white packaging, but it would not be in the balm formula. I ain't forking out 160 euros for a lip balm, because I don't really use lip balms out and about, I use them mostly at home. So if I were in an ideal world to be able to choose, I would put one of the refills of the satin or the matte into the white packaging that the lip balms come in. But I'm assuming that's not going to be an option. I don't actually think this eyeshadow requires to put glitter glue. I think it looks really pretty as it is, but because I have that horrible line here that I want to correct for a bit, I'm going to put a bit of glitter glue. This is the one from NYX, and I'm going to apply a bit more of that Blue Purple Duochrome over the glitter glue and hopefully fix my left eyelid. Yeah, so why am I choosing a matte over a satin when satin is in fact my favorite type of formula? I will tell you the reason. Because satin formulas could go one of two ways for me. They could be amazing, nourishing, slightly shiny and not leave my lip lines, but they unfortunately also could be the type that leaves my lip lines, and I would really not like to purchase a lipstick that I am a little bit afraid of using, and that's why I never use. I'm now going to just use my finger, by the way, to apply the Blue Purple Duochrome. That's so pretty. So I would choose for the matte because I think that's just the safe choice for me in terms of a finish. I trust that the matte formula is going to be at the very least similar to Pat McGrath's own matte trans lipsticks. By the way, the matte finish lipsticks seem to have that like velvety texture of the bullet that we've seen from Lisa Outraged, from Pat McGrath, from Dior. There seems to be a little bit of a pattern and that velvety finish to the bullet. So I assume that it's going to be some sort of like a very comfortable creamy matte lipstick, and I personally would choose a red because I am someone who uses red lipstick on quite the regular basis. So in my inner corner I'm going to put a little bit of this whitish pinkish duochrome here, just using the tiny brush that I used earlier for the pencil work. You know what, I might actually intensify the blue pencil a little bit because I feel like it got a bit lost underneath the blue purple duochrome. So yes, that would be my choice in terms of a lipstick. And we're just talking fantasizing here. I have not made up my mind whether I would like to try this brand or not. It will not be upon the initial release. I will definitely need to hear a lot about it before I make up my mind. If it turns out that the packaging is extremely luxurious, because I like the packaging, I think that's something I mentioned in my previous video, but if you're coming to this release as a Pat McGrath fan person, and like me, you don't really care for the Louis Vuitton brand that much, but you were quite shocked by the prices, I think you need to, and you can afford to buy some of it, I think you need to look at this release and look at the products and think, can they stand on their own feet, on their own merits? Like, do you look at this and think, well, that's gorgeous, even if Pat McGrath weren't attached to this, I would still want to buy it? I think that's a really important question to ask yourselves. So after I saw the release, because Pat is involved and because I think the packaging is actually quite stunning, I would consider to purchase something, but not before I know a lot about these products, especially about the packaging. Since the packaging is the biggest draw here, I would want to know that it is as luxurious and as hefty as it looks in the photos. And now let's briefly talk about the eyeshadow palettes. So the eyeshadow palettes, there's 8 of them, and they range in color stories. And I'll tell you what, I quite like the curations that Pat has made. I think they're all beautiful. There is a little something for everyone there. My personal favorites are the blue eyeshadow color story, because that taupe looks absolutely delightful. That sparkly, appearing to be sparkly cornflower blue is just a eyeshadow I've wanted Pat to introduce into her own brand for years. The other 2 blues, pretty as well. Well, actually no, there is like a matte dark navy blue that appears in the palette as well, which also looks like a very classy undertone of blue. Love the blue eyeshadow palette. The other palette that surprisingly has struck my fancy is the purple one. There's something about that muted mauve purple eggplanty color story with that gorgeous taupe that really speaks to the depths of my soul. I love that color story. By the way, I'm now going to go back into Decadence and just slightly intensify the dark blue liner so that it doesn't get completely lost. The other thing I wanted to address is what appears to be the formula of these eyeshadows. Of course, this is pure speculation. Before we've seen people actually showing them on camera, swatching them, we wouldn't really know. But to me, these look like some sort of a baked formula. They have a dome to them, which I think is either going to be somewhat of a more traditional baked formula, or is going to be something akin to the Blitz Astros or the hard gelée formula from Pat McGrath Labs herself. If that turns out to be the case, I have like a bit of a conspiracy theory going on here. So you know how Pat herself stopped using that formula in her own palettes. Oh, by the way, I'm now taking whatever I had on this pencil brush and I'm just running that slightly underneath my lower lashes. You know how she stopped using that formula for the past couple of years, which oddly coincides probably with the timeline of her being involved with the Louis Vuitton brand. So if it turns out that this formula, the one that's going to be present in the Louis Vuitton quads, is really the Blitz Astral formula, so essentially we're getting Pat McGrath Blitz Astral quads with Louis Vuitton packaging. If that turns out to be the case, can there be some sort of like an exclusivity deal between Pat McGrath and whatever lab is making that formula, where she's not allowed to use this formula across different brands, and she chose to use it for the Louis Vuitton launch, and that's why we haven't seen it anymore in her own palettes? I know that sounds like one of those conspiracy theories you would read in the darkest corners of the internet, but I was just wondering if that's a possibility, because the timing really fits. Like exactly the last couple of years when this whole Louis Vuitton makeup brand has gotten off the ground coincides with the time that we stopped seeing that formula featured in her makeup line. So I'm very curious. Do you guys have any insights on that? Can anyone comment on that? Other than that, before we see any sort of swatches of the eyeshadows, it's very hard to comment. But I think they're going to be rather pigmented. From what I've seen from Pat demoing that blue quad, it seems to be rather pigmented. So I think some of these eyeshadows are going to be soft and neutral. Some of them appear to be matte to satin in finish. Some of them are going to be glittery or metallic. Some of them appear to be duochromes. So I think I really think they look like Blitz Astral Quads from Pat. Before I share with you my final thoughts on the Louis Vuitton release, just wanted to mention that on my lips I have the satin lipstick in Beige D'Oubli from Hermes, which I believe now has been added to their permanent range. So speaking of the eyeshadow palettes, just to finish that part, like I said, I think they're beautiful. They're a bit too exorbitant for my personal taste. I think 220 euros just pushes it a little bit too far, even for me. Even my curiosity has its boundaries, and unless this formula turns out to be something truly innovative and spectacular, and I absolutely have to try it, I just can't. I can't. So in the meantime, I'm going to admire this whole collection from afar. I'm going to, with heightened curiosity, look out for videos from people that I trust who may try the eyeshadows or may have gone to stores where they have swatched and experienced the whole makeup line so that they can share some first-hand thoughts. I am not even entirely sure how exactly we can get our hands on this here in the Netherlands, so perhaps I'm just fantasizing about something that I can't even get my hands on. So that would make, you know, the whole dilemma really quick to solve. If we can't get our hands on them, then I can forget about it. But for now, I'm really just going to admire it from afar. I'm going to hear reviews. I'm going to be very curious what the formulas are going to be like and what the packaging really feels like in real life. In the meantime, let us not all forget that Mother has been teasing a new eyeshadow product coming, because she had a model on which they applied this very beautiful sparkly toppery-like purple shade. And when they asked her in the comments what it was, she said something was coming. And of course, it is almost September, so Pat McGrath Labs' own holiday collection will be announced on the short term. So let's just all not forget that Pat McGrath still has her own brand, is still going to give us amazing products within the range of her own makeup brand, and we can just, you know, splurge on those because they're probably going to be amazing as well. Personally, I'm very excited for that. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion about the Louis Vuitton makeup brand with Pat McGrath Labs as creative director in the steering wheel. Please do share your thoughts. I'm curious to hear your input on this. I think a lot of you, like me, were going to purchase something if it was somewhat more reasonably priced and because of Pat McGrath, and probably now you are, you know, taking a few steps back just like I am. But I would love to hear your thoughts. As usual, thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!